starless night, and the darkness outside my car window seemed impenetrable. I was driving alone on an isolated stretch of Route 66, the old deserted highway that once thrived with life but now lay forgotten in the shadows of time. The only company I had was the soft hum of my engine and the occasional rustle of leaves in the wind. As I continued down the desolate road, my headlights struggled to pierce through the dense blackness. The darkness seemed to swallow up everything, and a strange unease began to settle in the pit of my stomach. But I kept pushing forward, reassuring myself that it was just my imagination playing tricks on me. I had heard tales of this forsaken highway being haunted, but I was never one to believe in such stories. However, as the minutes turned into hours, the isolation and the eerie silence started to get under my skin. I tried to distract myself with music, but every song seemed to take on a haunting melody. Suddenly, my car's headlights flickered, momentarily casting the surroundings into complete darkness. My heart skipped a beat, and I held my breath, praying that my car wouldn't break down in this desolate place. To my relief, the lights came back on, and I sighed with relief, chalking it up to a minor glitch. But as I pressed on, I noticed something strange in the distance. There was a faint glow, like a distant fire burning. My curiosity got the better of me, and against my better judgment, I decided to investigate. I reasoned that maybe there was a gas station or some kind of shelter ahead. As I got closer to the source of the glow, a sense of foreboding washed over me. It wasn't a fire. It was a soft, ethereal light emanating from what appeared to be an old, abandoned house off the side of the road. The windows were shattered, and the wooden boards that once protected its secrets were now weathered and decaying. I should have turned back right then, but something inexplicably drew me toward that house. It was as though an unseen force was pulling me in, and I couldn't resist its magnetic pull. My heart pounded in my chest, but curiosity and a strange mix of fear and excitement urged me forward. I parked my car in front of the dilapidated structure and stepped out, the gravel crunching beneath my feet. The wind howled, and the house seemed to groan in response. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, but I pressed on, my flashlight in hand. The air inside the house was thick with dust and decay. I moved cautiously, exploring room after room, each one filled with remnants of a past life. Old furniture, faded photographs, and broken belongings lay scattered around, as if the occupants had abandoned the place in a hurry. As I wandered deeper into the bowels of the house, I heard a faint whisper, barely audible over the howling wind. It sounded like a plea for help, a desperate cry from a tortured soul. Fear gnawed at the edges of my mind, but I couldn't bring myself to leave. I felt compelled to uncover the secrets hidden within these walls. In one corner, I discovered an old, tattered journal. Its pages were yellowed with age, and the words were written in faded ink. As I read, the truth of the house's haunting history began to unfold before my eyes. The house once belonged to a reclusive family with a dark secret. The father, a disturbed man obsessed with the occult, conducted sinister rituals within its walls. He sought to commune with the dead, believing he could gain immense power and eternal life. But his experiments went horribly wrong, and malevolent spirits were unleashed, tormenting the family until they succumbed to madness. The journal spoke of desperate attempts to escape the vengeful entities that had taken root within the house, but the spirits would not be appeased. As I closed the journal, a sudden gust of wind extinguished my flashlight, plunging me into pitch darkness. Panic seized my heart, and I fumbled to relight the torch. In the momentary darkness, I felt an icy breath against my neck, and the whispering grew louder, more urgent. In that terrifying instant, I knew I had stayed too long. The spirits were enraged by my intrusion, and they wanted to claim me as their own. I stumbled back, the beam of light revealing shadows moving in the periphery of my vision. I could feel unseen hands grabbing at me, trying to pull me into their dark realm. With adrenaline surging through my veins, I sprinted back to my car, not daring to look back. The engine roared to life, and I peeled away from the haunted house, leaving the malevolent spirits behind. As I drove away from that nightmarish place, I vowed never to return to Route 66. The horrors I had witnessed would haunt my nightmares for years to come. I had learned a valuable lesson. Some roads are best left unexplored, for they hide secrets that can never be unseen and spirits that can never be escaped. As I drove further into the desolate night, I noticed a flickering light in the distance. like a distant fire dancing in the wind. My curiosity got the better of me, and I slowed down to investigate. Up ahead, I saw a small figure waving their arms, signaling for help. It was a young woman, seemingly in distress. Her face was obscured by the shadows, but her body language screamed desperation. Against my better judgment, I decided to stop and offer assistance. I unlocked the passenger door, and she hurriedly climbed in. "Thank you so much," she said, her voice quivering. "My car broke down a few miles back, and I've been stranded out here for hours." I smiled reassuringly, trying to put her at ease. She appeared to be in her early 20s, dressed in a casual outfit that seemed out of place on this dark and eerie night. As we continued down the road, she shared snippets of her life, her voice filled with anxiety. "I'm Alice," she introduced herself. "I was visiting my family, and now I'm just trying to get back home." As we conversed, I noticed her hands were trembling, and her eyes darted nervously from the road to her surroundings. It was then that I caught a glimpse of something glinting in her bag, a knife, hidden away from sight. My heart skipped a beat, and a chill ran down my spine. Feigning calmness, I tried to focus on the road, but my mind raced with fearful thoughts. Had I unknowingly picked up a dangerous hitchhiker? My pulse quickened, and I considered pulling over to ask her to leave, but the isolation of the night left me feeling vulnerable. "You must be tired," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "Why don't you get some rest? There's a blanket in the back seat." To my relief, Alice agreed and reclined the passenger seat. As she closed her eyes, I tried to steady my breathing and think of a way to escape this potentially dangerous situation. My mind was filled with scenarios of what could happen, each more terrifying than the last. A few miles later, I spotted a gas station up ahead. I saw it as my chance to get away from Alice without causing a scene. Pretending to be low on gas, I announced that I needed to stop to fill up. "I'll just run in and pay," I said, my voice quivering with nerves. "You can stay here and rest." As I pulled into the gas station, my heart pounded in my chest. I kept my eyes on Alice in the rearview mirror, making sure she didn't make any sudden moves. I quickly paid for the gas, my hands shaking as I handed over the money. When I returned to the car, Alice was still in the passenger seat, seemingly calm. I thanked her for her company and suggested that I drop her off at a nearby rest stop where she could find help for her broken-down car. "Actually," she said with a sinister smile, "I think I'll stay with you a little longer." My blood ran cold, and I knew that I was in grave danger. Panic set in as I tried to think of a way to escape her clutches. Without a moment's hesitation, I slammed my foot on the gas pedal, determined to get as far away from Alice as possible. But as I sped down the road, my heart sank. In the distance, I saw the glow of headlights approaching rapidly from behind. Alice had called for help, and now her accomplice was closing in on me. Fear and desperation gripped me, and I made a split-second decision to veer off the road, hoping to lose them in the surrounding darkness. The car skidded to a stop, and I held my breath, praying that I had managed to outwit them. In the deafening silence that followed, I dared not move. My hands clutched the steering wheel, my heart pounding like a drum in my chest. Suddenly, a loud thud echoed through the night, and the passenger door swung open. It was Alice, standing outside the car with a malevolent glint in her eyes. "You can't escape," she hissed, revealing the knife hidden in her hand. Terrified, I desperately searched for an escape route. Without a second thought, I threw open my door and ran into the darkness, the sound of their pursuit close behind. My heart pounded in my ears as I stumbled through the underbrush, praying for anyone to come to my aid. As I sprinted through the night, I saw a faint light up ahead. It was a farmhouse, and I mustered all the strength I had left to reach it. I banged on the door, tears streaming down my face, and begged for help. The door creaked open, and an elderly couple appeared. They took one look at my terrified state and quickly invited me in, shutting the door behind me. They called the police, and within minutes, sirens could be heard in the distance. The police arrived and investigated the area, but Alice and her accomplice were long gone. The fear of what could have happened that night haunts me to this day, a chilling reminder that sometimes the darkness lurking on the roads we travel isn't just the absence of light, but the presence of true evil. As the clock struck midnight, I found myself on a dark and winding road, surrounded by an impenetrable forest. I had taken a wrong turn, trying to find a shortcut home after a long day's drive, The GPS signal was weak, and my phone had almost no battery left. Panic gnawed at me as I realized I was truly lost. I tried to shake off the feeling of unease, telling myself it was just the exhaustion and the darkness playing tricks on my mind. But as I continued down the desolate road, the silence and isolation became suffocating. My headlights barely penetrated the darkness, and the trees seemed to lean in, as if trying to block my way. The silence was broken only by the sound of my tires crunching on the gravel beneath them. I glanced at the GPS again, but the map showed nothing but a blank screen. Fear crept in as I realized I had no idea where I was or how to get back on track. I kept driving, hoping to find a sign or some indication of civilization, but the road seemed to stretch on endlessly, with no end in sight. It was as if I had stumbled onto an unseen road, a path that was not meant for human eyes. The air inside the car grew heavy, and a sense of foreboding settled over me. I could feel eyes watching me from the darkness beyond my headlights. I told myself it was just my imagination, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was not alone. I decided to call for help, but my phone had died completely. I cursed myself for not charging it before I left. Now, I was truly alone in the dark, with no way to communicate with the outside world. As I continued to drive, the road seemed to twist and turn in ways that defied logic. It was as if the path was leading me deeper into the heart of the forest, away from any sign of civilization. I considered turning back, but the fear of getting even more lost prevented me. I had no choice but to keep going, hoping that I would eventually find my way back to familiar territory. The forest grew denser, and the darkness seemed to close in around me. I felt a chill in the air, even though the car's heater was on full blast. I wrapped my arms around myself, trying to ward off the cold. Then in the distance, I saw a flickering light. Relief washed over me as I approached what appeared to be a small town, but as I got closer, my heart sank. The town was deserted, its buildings crumbling and abandoned. The flickering light came from a lone street lamp, casting eerie shadows on the empty streets. I parked my car and got out, hoping to find someone who could help me. But the silence was deafening, and there was no sign of life anywhere. I walked through the deserted town, my footsteps echoing in the stillness. Every house I passed was empty, with broken windows and overgrown gardens. It was like a ghost town, frozen in time. I felt a growing sense of dread as I continued to explore. It was as if the town was a trap, a place that lured in unsuspecting travelers and never let them leave. I tried to shake off the fear, telling myself that I was just being paranoid. But then, as I turned a corner, I saw it, a figure standing in the distance. My heart pounded in my chest as I approached cautiously. It was a woman, dressed in a tattered white gown. Her hair was long and disheveled, and her eyes held a haunting emptiness. "Are you okay?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She didn't respond, but instead pointed down a nearby alley. "You must leave," she said, her voice soft and ethereal. I wanted to ask her why, to demand answers, but something in her eyes told me to trust her. I nodded and turned to leave, but as I did, I saw more figures in the distance, all dressed in tattered gowns. Fear gripped me, and I ran back to my car. I slammed the door shut and drove away as fast as I could, not looking back. As I left the town behind, I felt a sense of relief, but the fear lingered, and I knew I would never forget what I had seen. I eventually found my way back to a familiar road and made it home safely, but the experience haunted me for weeks. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had stumbled onto something otherworldly, something that was not meant for human eyes. I tried to find information about the deserted town, but there was no record of its existence. It was as if the town had never been there at all. To this day, I can't explain what happened that night. All I know is that I drove down an unseen road and found myself in a place that should not exist. I try to convince myself that it was just a vivid nightmare, that I imagined it all. But the fear that gripped me that night tells me otherwise.